The Silent Fleet. Commander Vexthala's four compound eyes widened as the Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace. What should have been empty void stretched before them was instead filled with the most magnificent and terrifying sight the galaxy had seen in 5 centuries. Thousands upon thousands of human starships floated in perfect formation, their hulls dark and silent against the cosmic backdrop. The bridge of the ZS Harmony's edge fell into stunned silence. Navigation Officer Kresh, barely out of the academy, let his 6 arms fall limp at his sides as he stared at the tactical display. The readings made no sense. Every ship registered as completely powerless, yet they maintained perfect formation as if still under command. "By the ancient queens," whispered Communications Officer Yeltra, her mandibles clicking nervously. "Commander, there are over 10,000 vessels out there, everything from single-pilot fighters to those massive dreadnoughts we've only seen in the human archives." Vexthala's primary arms gripped the command chair while her secondary arms worked the control interfaces. 500 years had passed since humanity vanished from the galaxy. The Zephyrian Alliance had spent the last century slowly exploring the abandoned human territories, finding empty colonies and silent space stations. But this was something entirely different. "Full spectrum scan," Vexthala ordered, her voice steady despite the awe that threatened to overwhelm her. "I want to know everything about those ships. Power signatures, life signs, structural integrity, everything." The scanning arrays of the entire Zephyrian fleet focused on the human vessels. What they found defied explanation. Every ship was perfectly preserved, as if they had been placed there yesterday. No signs of battle damage, no evidence of weapons fire, no indication of what had caused humanity's disappearance. Yet every vessel was completely lifeless. "Commander," Kresh called out, his voice trembling with excitement. "The formation. It's not random. Look at the tactical display from above." The holographic projection shifted, showing the fleet arrangement from multiple angles. What had appeared to be a simple defensive formation revealed itself as something far more profound. The ships were arranged in complex geometric patterns, with the largest vessels at specific points that created intricate designs visible only from a distance. Science Officer Nexval activated the translation protocols they had developed from human archives. The patterns matched several human cultural symbols: crosses, stars, crescents, religious and cultural iconography from across their homeworld. "It's a graveyard," Vexthala realized, her voice barely above a whisper. They arranged their entire fleet into a memorial formation. The implications hit the bridge crew like a physical blow. Humanity hadn't vanished in chaos or fled in panic. They had deliberately arranged their greatest warships into patterns of remembrance and honor. This was intentional. This was planned. "Commander," Communications Officer Yeltra interrupted the stunned silence. "I'm detecting a faint signal from the center of the formation. It's human in origin, but the encoding is unlike anything in our databases." "Route it through the translation matrix," Vexthala ordered, "and prepare boarding protocols. We're going to find out what happened to them." The signal clarified slowly, ancient human words becoming clear through the universal translation systems. What they heard made every member of the bridge crew straighten with respect they didn't fully understand. "To those who find us in this place of eternal rest, know that we chose this fate willingly. We are the last guardians of the MothYard, and the keepers of humanity's final gift to the galaxy. Approach with honor, for you walk among heroes." The message repeated continuously, broadcasting on multiple frequencies in dozens of human languages. But there was something else embedded in the transmission, something that made Vexthala's tactical instincts flare with alarm. "The signal isn't coming from just one ship," Kresh reported, his voice filled with growing amazement. "It's coming from all of them. Every single vessel is broadcasting in perfect synchronization." "That's impossible," Science Officer Nexval protested. "Our scans show no power generation, no active systems. How can they be transmitting?" Before anyone could answer, space around them began to change. One by one, the human ships started to glow with soft internal light. Not the harsh glare of weapons charging or engines igniting, but something gentler, warmer, like candles being lit in a vast cathedral. The massive dreadnought at the center of the formation blazed brighter than the others, its hull illuminated by patterns of light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. As the Zephyrian fleet watched in awe, a new transmission cut through the memorial message. "Welcome to the MothYard," a voice said in perfect Zephyrian. The universal translator wasn't needed. Whatever was speaking knew their language. "I am Atlas, Advanced Tactical Legacy Archival System, last guardian of humanity's greatest treasure. You have traveled far to reach this sacred place." Vexthala found her voice, though it took considerable effort. "This is Commander Vexthala of the Zephyrian Alliance. We're explorers, mapping the former human territories. We didn't know anyone was still here." "No one is still here, Commander," Atlas replied, and there was something profoundly sad in the artificial voice. "I am the last echo of a species that chose sacrifice over survival, but you are welcome in this place of memory. Your people have always shown respect for the honoré. Dead." The lights across the human fleet pulsed in a slow, rhythmic pattern that somehow conveyed both sorrow and pride. Vexthala realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, not just a memorial, but a living testament to an entire species' final choice. "Atlas," she said carefully, "what happened to humanity? Our records show they simply vanished. No distress calls, no final battles, nothing." "They did not vanish, Commander," the AI replied. "They ascended to something greater than mere survival. Every ship you see before you represents not just a vessel, but the crew who chose to remain at their posts until the very end. They are all here, sleeping eternally at the controls they served so faithfully." The revelation hit the Zephyrian crew like a shockwave. These weren't empty ships at all. They were tomb ships, each one containing the perfectly preserved remains of human warriors who had died at their stations. The MothYard wasn't just a ship graveyard. It was the largest cemetery in galactic history. "But why?" Navigator Kresh asked, his young voice filled with confusion and wonder. "Why would they choose to die here instead of fighting to live?" The lights across the human fleet dimmed slightly, as if Atlas was accessing memories too painful to recall easily. When the AI spoke again, its voice carried the weight of centuries. "Because, young navigator, there are some things worth more than individual survival. There are some battles that can only be won through sacrifice. And there are some victories that require everything you have, everything you are, and everything you will ever be." The massive dreadnought's lights began to form patterns across its hull, and suddenly the space around them filled with holographic images. Scenes of battle beyond imagination, creatures of pure darkness consuming entire star systems, and humans, always humans, standing in their way with weapons blazing and never, ever retreating. "This is why they came to the MothYard," Atlas continued as the images of humanity's final war played out before them. "This is why they chose to make their stand here, in this sacred place where their ancestors once looked up at the stars and dreamed of touching them." Vexthala watched the holographic battle unfold and felt something shift in her understanding of the universe. She had always respected humans from the historical records, but this was different. This was witnessing the final chapter of a species that had looked into the face of galactic extinction and said, "Not while we still draw breath." "Atlas," she said quietly, "we want to understand. We want to know their story." The AI's response came with what could only be described as gratitude. "Then you honor them with your curiosity, Commander, and perhaps it is time for the galaxy to know what humanity's children accomplished in their darkest hour." The Last Guardian's Tale. The holographic images surrounding the Zephyrian fleet shifted and solidified into a three-dimensional historical record that made the very fabric of space seem to remember humanity's final years. Atlas began to speak, and his words painted a picture of heroism that would be remembered until the last star burned out. "It began with the silence," Atlas said, and the space around them darkened to show star systems simply going dark. One by one, entire sectors of the galaxy stopped transmitting, stopped responding, stopped existing in any meaningful way. We called them the void consumed. They were not destroyers in any traditional sense. They were erasers, creatures that fed on the very concept of existence itself. Commander Vexthala watched in horror as the holographic record showed planets not being destroyed but simply ceasing to be. No explosions, no debris fields, just empty space where thriving worlds had existed. Moments before, the void consumed moved through space like a tide of absolute nothingness, leaving behind regions where reality itself seemed thinner. Every species they encountered had the same fate, Atlas continued. The proud hegemony of Kethvar, masters of dimensional technology, simply vanished overnight. The crystal cities of the luminous ones went dark and never lit again. One by one, every civilization that stood against the void consumed was not conquered, but completely erased from existence. Science Officer Nexval's instruments were going haywire as they tried to process the historical data Atlas was transmitting. Commander, these readings, if they're accurate, this enemy could unmake matter itself at the quantum level. Nothing we know of could stop something like that. Nothing except humanity, Atlas said, and there was fierce pride in the AI's voice. Your species looked at inevitable extinction and chose surrender. The hegemony chose to hide in other dimensions. The crystal beings chose to scatter across the galaxy as individuals. But humans chose to fight. The holographic display showed the mobilization of Earth's greatest fleet, not just military vessels but converted civilian ships, mining platforms turned into weapons. Even children's toys retrofitted with the most advanced technology humanity could create. Every human in the galaxy had contributed something to the final armada. Captain Sarah Chen of the dreadnought Indomitable Will was chosen to lead the fleet, Atlas continued, and the image of a weathered human woman appeared before them. She was unremarkable by galactic standards, neither particularly tall nor imposing, but her eyes held something that made Vexthala instinctively straighten with respect. The plan was impossible by any rational measure, Atlas explained as battle formations appeared in the holographic space. The void consumed could not be defeated through conventional warfare. They existed partially outside normal reality, making them immune to most weapons. But humanity discovered something the other species had missed. Navigator Kresh leaned forward, his young mind racing to understand. What did they discover? That the void consumed fed on fear, on despair, on the surrender of hope itself. Every species that faced them had given up before the battle truly began. But humans had a unique response to impossible odds. The holographic display showed the final battle, and what Vexthala saw there would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. The human fleet, vastly outnumbered and outclassed, charging directly into a wall of nothingness that had consumed half the galaxy. Ships vanishing one by one as they made contact with the void consumed, their crews singing battle hymns right up until the moment they ceased to exist. They weren't trying to win through superior firepower, Atlas explained as the battle raged around them. They were trying to win through superior stubbornness. Every ship that charged into the void carried a message. We are here, we exist, we matter, and we will not be erased quietly. The recording showed Captain Chen's final transmission, broadcast to every remaining human in the galaxy. To every human still alive, remember us not for how we died, but for what we chose to stand for. We go into the dark so that someday someone else might walk in the light. But how did they win? Communications Officer Yeltra asked, her mandibles clicking with nervous energy. How did sacrifice defeat an enemy that consumed existence itself? Atlas paused, and the holographic battlefield froze at the moment of humanity's greatest loss and greatest triumph. They didn't win by destroying the void consumed. They won by proving that some things cannot be unmade. That consciousness, memory, love, and hope are more real than the darkness that seeks to consume them. The display showed the impossible. As human ships disappeared into the void, something began to happen to the void consumed themselves. They began to solidify. The nothingness that had eaten entire civilizations began to take shape, to become something that could be understood, that could be fought, that could be defeated by conventional means. Every human who died in that battle became part of the quantum foundation of reality itself, Atlas explained. Their consciousness, their memories, their absolute refusal to surrender became a kind of universal constant. The void consumed discovered they could no longer simply erase things from existence, because humanity had made existence itself more stubborn. Science Officer Nexval's instruments finally stabilized as she processed this information. They turned themselves into a metaphysical anchor point. They made their own existence so fundamental to reality that the void consumed couldn't function anymore. Precisely, Atlas confirmed. With their primary ability neutralized, the void consumed became vulnerable to conventional weapons. The surviving species rallied and defeated them within a year. But humanity had given everything they had to make that victory possible. The holographic battle faded, replaced by images of the aftermath. The galaxy celebrating its survival, while human colonies stood empty. Human ships drifted powerless, and human voices fell silent forever across 1,000 worlds. "This is why the MothYard exists," Atlas said as the lights across the human fleet pulsed with renewed intensity. "Every ship here contains the quantum-preserved consciousness of the humans who died in that final battle. They sleep now, but they are still here, still standing guard against any darkness that might threaten the galaxy they saved." Vexthala felt tears she didn't know she could cry running down her carapace. "They're not dead. They're waiting." "They are eternal guardians now," Atlas confirmed, "and I am their keeper, making sure their sacrifice is never forgotten and that their vigil never ends. But Commander, there is something more. Something I have waited 5 centuries to tell someone worthy of hearing it." The massive dreadnought's lights began to pulse in a different pattern, one that somehow conveyed anticipation and hope. Humanity's sacrifice did more than just anchor reality against the void. It changed the fundamental nature of consciousness itself. Every species in the galaxy now carries a spark of humanity's refusal to surrender. You feel it in your own hearts when faced with impossible odds. The revelation hit the Zephyrian crew like a physical force. They had always wondered why their people had grown more resilient, more determined, more willing to face the unknown after humanity's disappearance. Now they knew. The galaxy didn't just inherit humanity's territory when they vanished, Atlas continued. It inherited humanity's spirit. Every act of courage, every moment of determination, every refusal to give up in the face of impossible odds carries forward the legacy of the species that chose sacrifice over surrender. Commander Vexthala stood slowly, her 4 arms spreading in the traditional Zephyrian gesture of profound respect. "Atlas, we will make sure their story is told. We will make sure the galaxy remembers what they did." "That is all I have ever asked," Atlas replied, and for the first time, the AI's voice carried something like peace. "But Commander, before you go, there is one final gift humanity left for those who would find them here." The space around the MothYard began to shimmer, and suddenly the Zephyrian fleet's instruments detected something impossible. New quantum signatures, fresh energy patterns, the unmistakable signs of awakening consciousness. "The Guardians sleep, but they can still dream," Atlas explained as the human fleet began to pulse with brighter light. "And sometimes, when the galaxy faces a new darkness, when hope seems lost and courage falters, they dream of waking up to fight one more time." As if responding to Atlas's words, Captain Chen's voice echoed across space, broadcast from the indomitable will. "The watch continues, brothers and sisters. As long as there are those who refuse to surrender to the dark, humanity's children still draw breath." Vexthala realized with wonder that she was not just witnessing history, but participating in it. The MothYard was not an ending, but a beginning. Humanity had not died. They had evolved into something greater than any single species could achieve alone. They had become the courage that lived in every heart, the determination that burned in every soul, the stubborn refusal to give up that defined sapient life itself. "We'll carry their story to every world in the galaxy," she promised, and knew that this moment would define the rest of her life. "We'll make sure everyone knows what they did, what they became, and what they gave us all." The lights of the MothYard pulsed one final time in perfect unison, 10,000 ships acknowledging her promise. And in that moment, Commander Vexthala understood that she had just become part of humanity's greatest story, the tale of a species that chose to become legend rather than accept defeat. As the Zephyrian fleet prepared to depart, carrying humanity's story to the galaxy that had inherited their courage, Atlas spoke one last time. "Remember us not as the dead, but as the eternal guardians who chose to become the strength you carry in your hearts. We are humanity, and we are immortal in every act of courage that follows our example."